welcome to yet another edition of Bob Talk. My name is Rio Raymond, and in company of me is Kiran Vas. We share a lot of things in common, like our alma mater, and of course, the beautiful city of Bangalore, something all of us share. Kiran, thank you so much for coming by.
It's my pleasure and lovely to be at Bob's studio.
You know, we
Radio.
say our tagline is called "Let's Put One Scene." Does that resonate with you? Because especially you are not in Bangalore, of late you're in Denmark. Do you heard of the term "Let's Put One Scene"?
Yes,
Do you know?
of course. Let's Put One is very, very famous and something which we grew up with also in my younger days. So Let's Put One is, I know it.
let's say what do you say the years are like when you say your younger days?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, so I'm born and brought up in the late 70s, early 80s. That's when, the Bangalore was a beautiful place. But we enjoyed life. I know we could do a lot of crazy stuff, and that's why I refer to my younger days. Carefree, footloose, and fancy free.
And I really have to say this every time I meet someone from a certain time in Bangalore, not to make you sound old, although you look quite the young, gentleman that you are. But how was Bangalore back in the day, and where were you staying?
I'm born and brought up in Richmond town.
Okay.
25 Serpentine Street, charming bungalow. I took a auto on the way to the studio, and he took me down Hosur Road.
Okay.
Before he turned left towards Ijipura, which is like the center of Bangalore today.
Uh-huh.
So I was probably 10 years old, and I must have done something which my parents didn't like, and I decided to run away from home. So I had a small little red cycle, and at the age of 10, I cycled down Hosur Road, and then I reached the cemetery, right? And I got frightened, I got scared because this was the end of the world or the end of Bangalore. And
That's hardly 1 kilometer.
Hardly 1 kilometer. So just to put things into perspective, this probably was 1978, 79, right? Where, Hosur Road, the Catholic cemetery, Muslim cemetery was the end of the road or the end of the world for us. And forget coming to Ardgudi and all that. It was like crossing the border, you probably needed a passport or something like that. So that's, how Bangalore was, for me, beautiful, bungalows, gulmohar trees, tamarind trees to climb, compound walls to jump across, cricket balls made of the jam, the cock balls.
Ball.
Yeah, kite fights, which we make our own manja with, glass pieces, and even, somebody told us, put like dog shit or whatever on it. So those are the good old days where, we jumped from rooftop to rooftop, friends played on the road, Dubai Spice, hide and seek, fantastic memories.
So now we know it was not just a 90s game of playing dabba. It was also something that back in the 70s as well.
Yeah, 70s, 80s. I mean, 80s I was probably in my teens, so it was more like roadside cricket, hockey, football on the roads, highly competitive. I mean, serious competition. The leg spin and all this is like, they're totally crazy. That's why I laugh when I see the IPL matches today. All the shots these guys are hitting today and getting paid a lot of money. We should do that free of cost as children, right? Falling on your knees and scooping the ball over mid-wicket or point or backward point. We should do all this, for the fun of it. But great stories.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a great chat. But before we get into the reason why we're here, I also want to ask you, are you also from St. Anthony's?
Yeah.
Hence the cockball making stories?
Yeah, cockball. Yeah, the jam and all. We should collect all the jam from there. They had beautiful trees on Convent Road.
These gulmohar trees, we don't get to hear of them a lot or even read about them of late.
Yeah.
And another thing about not just the gulmohar trees, for anyone for our age, is whenever we looked at a senior from school or whenever someone of a senior age is talking, when they use abusive language, it's so much of a fun to just listen to them. It was the case when we were, in school as well and, just into college too. Was it the same case for you guys as well when you met some seniors too?
Yeah, so my biggest inspirations are my seniors who lived around my road, up to 2-3 years, senior to me. So I learned everything in life from them. Seriously, and even today we are well connected. When I come down, we get together for a cup of coffee or a dosa or something like that. Because I learned so much from these guys, including the good habits and the bad habits. How to make paper kites, how to make the tops and gunj, right? All the stuff I learned from these guys, and these guys are my heroes. And in fact, I can also share this with you. Is when I wrote my book, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, one of my seniors, Jocelyn, he's about 3 years senior to me. He started writing stories of our childhood. So every day, for quite some time, he would write this story and say, "Kiran, remember we played this game?" Or "Kiran, remember how we used to take money from our parents and go for a movie in Rex Theatre for 2 rupees, how we used to go boating in Also Lake. So all these beautiful stories he started documenting, by himself, because there are so many beautiful memories, and I think each generation has those
their
memories.
own.
Yeah.
But it is always very intriguing and fascinating to know about the stories of people who lived, I would say, an old Bangalore that we never got to see. At least got a small part of it. I think my generation is like that bridge between the old and the new.
Yeah.
We saw the revolution as well. But you guys had the best of Bangalore. And it's really fascinating every time, we end up talking about this and imagine and picturize what would have it been like, back in the day. Slow, calm city that, everyone called not just home but in haven for everyone to stay in. But now we'll come to discuss about what we're here for. Kiran Vas, you're the author of this book called Imperfectly Perfect, Story of Our Lives. You also said that as well.
Yeah.
This is about ADHD, people with ADHD, and also how one can be successful in what they do. You have been diagnosed with ADHD. What does ADHD stand for?
Yeah, so ADHD is attention deficiency hyperactive disorder. So it's I make a small little bit of a disclaimer over here. Is I don't have a medical background, so a lot of the stuff which I'm telling you is what I have learned from my medical team and my own experience. So I'm like the guinea pig in this. So it's like two parts. One is attention deficiency. So you can't pay attention for too long on things which don't interest you. And then you have the hyperactive part. It's like you can't sit still. So there are two sort of traits in ADHD. People who are diagnosed with ADHD can have, like, for example, only attention deficiency. It's called ADD, attention deficiency disorder, because they are not hyperactive.
Right.
I'm blessed with both attention deficiency and hyperactive disorder. So I am hyperactive. I got ants in my pants. As well as, if somebody tells me something which doesn't interest me, he's lost me in the first minute or two. But if he or she tells me something which is really interesting, then I go in, and that's called the hyperfocus, because then I can really focus for long periods of time, and I'm in the zone.
Is this something that people are born with, or this happens over lifestyle and habits?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of discussion around this today. So my take on this is what I've understood is it's hereditary. So I don't want to give any percentages, but it's a double-digit percentage of me inheriting it from one of my parents, and the chance of my children inheriting this from me is also double-digit, percentage. So it's there in the genes, and that's what I think the science says today. And I think we'll just get more and more, clever as the scientists and the medical community and the experts learn more and more about ADHD, which is a fascinating topic all by itself.
In today's time, definitely it is, because of the way we as humans are functioning in a society, in a lifestyle that we live in, everything. But when it comes down to downplaying ADHD, because for the longest time, not many have heard of this, and also off late has become the current, it's like a fad. Like everybody thinks, oh, I have ADHD. But how do you know that that person has ADHD? Because today, if you look at it, with the lifestyles that we lead is so fast paced, and like we were having discussion offline as well. It's very difficult for you to concentrate on one thing. You have 100 things running on your mind. Does that person have ADHD in that case?
Yeah. So I mean, I can just try to give you a very professional opinion of what it is. So the way I understand it is like the signs or the traits of ADHD, they're very predominant, let's say from the age of 5 to 6 to maybe 15 or 16. And then it tends to sort of disappear because you've learned to sort of deal with it in your daily life, and you survive, right? So what's happening now, which happened also in my case, was that I got my diagnosis of ADHD at the age of 54. So I don't know if I had ADHD as a child. So I have no proof that I had ADHD as a child. But I was diagnosed at 54 with what is called adult ADHD because I had a lot of trouble for many, many years, which are typically traits of a person with ADHD. So, for example, I was not sleeping properly. I had depression. I had anxiety. I had, a lot of restlessness in my body. And that's what sort of encouraged my wife to take me to a doctor, who then tried to treat me, by himself. And then one day he said, "No, you need more help. Let's try to find the root cause of what I just told you about, the depression, the anxiety, the sleeplessness." And in my case, I was lucky to get a fantastic psychiatrist who basically heard the story which I'm telling you, and then told me, "Kiran, you don't have depression or anxiety or whatever, sleeplessness. we'll go for the root cause, and I think you have ADHD because some of the stuff you have achieved in your life, which I'm sure we'll discuss, I mean, no normal person will do it, right? And she was true, right? So the process for me to get diagnosed, it took about 15, 16 days answering questions. I called up all my friends in school, my cousins who I thought were more mischievous than me. So I did a very thorough sort of research of my background, looking into my life to actually complete the form, which resulted in a diagnosis of ADHD.
Now, when you say you were diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 54, but you were not sure you had ADHD when you were in your younger days or in your formative years, we know for a fact that, we even seen the movie called Tare Zameen Par, where they showed about how this kid is with dyslexia, something that was not paid attention to till the movie had, brought this whole subject in. But when you talk about ADHD, it seems like every kid will have a problem because we're hard of concentrating in class. If you'd ask me, I wouldn't do anything that was good with academics. But when it came to being on field, I could say I was one of the superstars, right? In this case, do you think that kid would be having some sort of an ADHD issue?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of after my diagnosis, I spoke to a lot of my friends, who I thought were more mischievous than me in school. And the funny thing is, a lot of their children too, have a recognized diagnosis for ADHD, right? So the way I see it is that people with ADHD, we are pretty sharp, right? So we can. What I write in my book, I call it, we can disguise our strengths, our weaknesses as strengths, right? And that's because we are so sharp, right? So in my case, a lot of my ADHD sort of traits, the bad ones, were probably managed through structure, right? So my dad was very structured. Kiran, get up in the morning at 6 o'clock. Kiran, go brush your teeth. Kiran, go to church. Kiran, polish your shoes. Kiran, eat proper breakfast, 8 o'clock breakfast. Then we went to St. Joseph's Boys High School in St. Anthony's. The Jesuits, very, very structured. Very, very, very structured, right? I joined the Merchant Navy after school and college. Very, very structured, right?
Yeah.
And then at home, my wife too is very, very structured. So a lot of, let's say, the negative traits of ADHD were probably sort of controlled by the structure given unconsciously to me, right? But if you compare me to, let's say, many of my batchmates, I was always among the most naughty, probably not the most naughtiest. Like you, I didn't go to school to study. I went to school to play, right? And the reason why I actually studied, and I've done quite well in life, I mean, I've got a master's and I've really studied after that. The reason why I actually started studying was in the 9th standard or 10th standard. If I failed, right, I knew I had to go to some other school, right? So I said, no, I want to play hockey for Joseph's. I want to play football for Joseph's. I've got to study. I've got to pass. And it was actually quite easy for me to actually sit down and study and pass, right? So this attention deficiency, I still today I require the dopamine kick. So when I was in class and the mango flew across the back from the back seat to the front seat, you require the dopamine kick, right? So that's why I continuously needed to do it. I continuously needed to be the center of attention. I continuously needed my classmates to look at me and say, wow, Kiran, do something more. Because that gave me the dopamine kick, right? And that's something which ADHD people, is the dopamine effect, right? So we need this continuous dopamine sort of...
For lack of better terming in terms of a societal way of looking at it, wouldn't we call it attention seeking because we are doing these things to get validation from others?
100%. 100%.
But so when someone does something like this, do you think that person, because there are many phases, there are many ways of someone says this person is diagnosed with a certain sort of an issue or a disease, of matter of fact. But when you look at things like this and when it's about attention seeking, does anyone seeking attention have an issue like an ADHD or anything of that sort?
So I think the attention seeking probably is also probably has something to do with your ego, right? So if I continuously need this validation, right? I continuously need this validation, so that's why I'm seeking attention. And then maybe they're doing it consciously, but I think an ADHD person will probably do it unconsciously, right?
It's very impulsive.
It's very impulsive. So you make these impulsive decisions. So many of my classmates, they look at me today and say, Kiran, we don't understand how you are still alive today. Because I would jump from the highest wall, I would climb the highest tree, and I had a father who was very supportive of me, pushing the boundaries. So I kept pushing the boundaries. So if I said, Daddy, I want to jump 2 meters, he would look at me and say, why 2 meters? Jump 4 meters, right? So that's what I was continuously seeking to push the boundaries. And this is also, if you look at my career, right? So while everybody else wanted to be a doctor and engineer, I wanted to be in the merchant navy. Kiran, you're from Bangalore. You're like 350 kilometers from the sea, right? What do you want to be in the merchant navy for? But I probably saw a picture. I probably met a merchant navy officer. I saw, wow, he's been across the world. He's wearing this nice Rolex watch. He's wearing like sunglasses. I also want this. And then that's the determination part, right? Then I will do everything in my power to try to join a ship, right? So that's what I think is, you called it, I think, attention seeking. I call it attention efficiency, because if I put my attention efficiently into something, I can do a lot, I can achieve it, right? So writing Perfectly Imperfect, see, that's a 2-year job. And that's probably the hardest thing somebody with ADHD can do, is to sit down and write a book. But I was in the zone. I hyper-focused. I was totally passionate about what I did. And the number of people I know who actually want to write books, the number of people who actually published, is like one in thousands, right? So this is what I'm trying to say, is that if you play with the ADHD is a serious mental disorder, so it needs proper guidance, it needs proper help, it needs a proper structure, it needs like medical attention. And fair enough, there are a lot of people who say I've got ADHD. In fact, my 2 children, a lot of the stuff which I do are for my 2 children, because like I told you before, they have a 30% chance of having ADHD. So I don't want them to go through life with the same, let's say, burdens or hurdles I had. If they struggle in life, I just want them to go to the doctor and say, my father has ADHD, please test me for this. So that's a gift I've given, my children. And even today, when we were young, we threw around a lot of words very, very loosely. I don't want to say them on radio, but
no, you can.
You're an X and
unfiltered,
you're a X and you're a Y, and we have all these fantastic labels, and after a minute or two, we were best friends, and we threw around the words. But today, my daughter, last time she came and told me, Daddy, I get so upset because people look at me and they say, like, you're so ADHD-like, right? And it actually hurts them because, they're being sort of unfairly labeled with ADHD. And I think people are doing it unconsciously, so just another label. But I think in my daughter's case, she's like 22, beautiful individual. I think it hurts her a little bit because she's probably smarter than, the next person, and she's probably doing like a really good job. And then she gets this label, right? And that's why if you look into my book, Perfectly Imperfect, my title is Kiran Vas, ADHD, because I'm extremely proud of my diagnosis of ADHD. And people look at it and say, wow, this takes guts to do, right?
Yeah, it's like, adding ADHD as a specialization and not like a diagnosis.
Exactly.
And for those of you watching, I know I mentioned talking about attention seeking. I know you would think like kids also seek for attention, but a kid's mind is not an able mind. We're having discussions about able minds, and I think that starts with when you start doing things on your own. Not teens, but I'm saying people who are 5 to 6 years old. I think they can think for themselves as much as they're very curious. They seek for attention, but that is not the mind we're talking about. We're talking about mind that is a little more older than that. And coming into terms with this particular ADHD sort of a diagnosis, right, Kiran? Anything today, when someone is diagnosed with some sort of an issue, I still don't want to call it a disease, because somewhere I'm a little, I can get a little palpitated, because when I say something to someone, it kind of hurts me because I know it might hurt them too. So when I say ADHD, today, anything for the matter of fact, if I tell somebody you probably have this, or if they're diagnosed with this, it becomes like a massive, low on morale. It pulls their confidence is low. But for you, at the age of 54, to finally say, I've done all this and now today I have this sort of an issue, how do you stand to take on this particular thing? It's a mind game, because
it is a mind game. That's very, very true. So, see, I've had a fabulous life. I'm 57 years old. For 54 years, I've had a fabulous life. So I've achieved every sort of goal or dream, I set for myself. 3 years I struggled. Literally, I struggled. My struggle started in 2010 or 11, when I was at the peak of my financial success. I started having like severe problems with my shoulders, like arthritis in my shoulders, where I became very, very worried. And the first time in my life, I couldn't sleep. So for 1 year, I couldn't sleep, right? And then one day, my daughter, who was about 10, 11, at that point of time, said, Dada, we don't like you, in this grumpy mood, because everybody who knows me from the age of, let's say, 1, 2, 3, what they remember me is for my smile, my sense of humor, the way I crack jokes, etc. She said, you've got to do something about this. So I was quite lucky. I have a friend who's a psychotherapist. I went up to him. He knows me from work for 15 years or something like that. And I told him, Brian, I've got this problem. He said, Kiran, I'm going to fix your sleep in three months, in 3 sessions. So we did hypnosis. We did semi-hypnosis. So within 3 sessions, this is literally like 3 hours on a couch doing super visualization, semi-hypnosis with Brian. I was sleeping like a baby again. But what it meant for me was I need a structure, right? So to sleep, I had to have a structure. So from 8 o'clock every night, I had to do this and then this and this. And that made me sleep like a baby, but it irritated the hell out of my family because we could go on holiday and then I would say, okay, 8 o'clock, oops, I've got to have dinner. I've got to do this, this and this. So it gave me a set of crutches, right? And then I started sleeping. Like, really, really well again. And then when it became really bad, and this is, I think, at the age of 54, what my psychiatrist told me was I went through a severe period of stress. We started a new company in artificial intelligence. This is back in 2017, when nobody knew what artificial intelligence was to the level, it was today. So that's the power of the mind. We started this company, but it was high levels of stress. And she's told me it was this stress which you went through, which actually triggered the dominant ADHD traits, in your body.
So are you saying if you didn't have to go through that stress at that point, you would not have been diagnosed with ADHD, or it's not even diagnosed, you would not have found out you have this because it somehow amplified that particular disease because of that stress. And it is a neurological effect on your brain as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So to answer your question again is, I would have gone to a doctor and the doctor would have probably told me, okay, Kiran, you've got stress, right? So, take time off or change your lifestyle. Or somebody would have said, you've got a depression, right? But, those are like the symptoms of ADHD. You have to be a really skilled doctor to actually take the time, understand the patient, to find the root cause. So in my case, the root cause was ADHD. It was not that I was suffering from a depression or anxiety or stress, because we are from Joseph's, right? And with our sort of lifestyle, we stress everybody in the room around us, right? So the word stress was new for me. I never knew what ADHD was till 2020. I never knew it. I probably knew what dyslexia was. Then I learned about bipolar. Then I learned about autism, because for 50 years we were living in this.
Were you Googling all these things based on what you were experiencing?
Yeah. So I recommend
not to do
it. Not to do it. So no YouTube, no Google. Don't do the forms. Online. 7 out of 10 people who talk to me at the end of the discussion, they say, Kiran, I think we've got ADHD, because most of them are entrepreneurs or something like that. So the traits are common. So the point I want to make is, if it's affecting your normal daily functioning as a human being or at the job, get professional help. There's help out there. Get the right person. It'll take some time to find these people, but it's worth the effort, because it changed my life. And the reason why it changed my life was, even though I've done so well, like the psychiatrist told me, was, okay, you're pretty smart, so you managed to camouflage your weaknesses as strengths, but now you know what gets you and what irritates you, right? So all the stuff which irritates you, give it to somebody else, right? So you can focus on the stuff which sort of interests you.
Would you also say, I'm just asking this based on, because a lot of the things that you're saying are kind of very similar to what I've been experiencing. I don't know, this is like a easy free diagnosis, I think. But do you also say that you get irritated with the smallest of things?
In some cases, yes. So
okay, then.
No, in some cases, yes, and that's where the attention deficiency comes in, right? And let me just come back to to what I was saying, right? So my whole life I've been in operations, right? So I've basically been kicking people's sort of XYZ to get things done, and I've made a fantastic living out of it. I can run global projects. I can plan. I can do a lot of stuff, right? But what I found out was I have a crazy fertile imagination. Okay, my imagination is like totally crazy, and I'm like really good to execute. But there was a gap in imagination and execution, right? And even though I've done so many things in my life, see, it was the creativity part which was missing, right? Because all the crazy stuff which I was imagining, right, I never executed in real life. I was actually creating my partner's vision or my company's vision or somebody else's vision. I was executing on it. But the minute I learned, if I can get this chain, what I call the ice pack, that's imagine, create, and execute, right? If I can get that formula to work for me, then there's nothing stopping me. Because the psychiatrist told me, Kiran, once you figure out how to use your ADHD, you're going to have the most brilliant life. Because suddenly you're focusing on your strengths. And your strengths are your imagination, your ability to create, and your ability to execute. So creativity, I learned at the age of 54. And that's why I wrote Perfectly Imperfect, because it's a beautiful book. I've created this fantastic universe with pixies, etc. Because number one, it's my own therapy. But number two is when you read the book, right, you will see Mrs. whatever, a class teacher, in it. I've just called her Mrs. Bolt. But when you read about Mrs. Bolt, you can relate to anybody in your childhood who had the same effect on you. You'll see people who have a large effect on you in the different characters. So there are 31 characters in the book which people can relate to, whether they have ADHD or not. So the point I want to make and to come back to is that creativity is like really, really important. And I think a lot of people who have ADHD are probably like super creative, but probably they're not using the creativity to the extent which they're capable of. And that's where a diagnosis of ADHD in my case helped me filter the crap from my life, give it to somebody else, don't focus on it anymore, and look into the beauty of what the ADHD brings into your life. And with a proper support system, with the proper help, you'll get back to this fantastic life which I said I had 54 years. For 54 years, I'm back there. I'm probably even higher. But get help, right? Don't try to diagnose yourself, because you'll go totally crazy. I mean, I can diagnose diabetes, I can diagnose cholesterol, I can diagnose myself with all diseases just by reading the internet, right? But somebody needs to hold your hand. Somebody has to help you to ask the question, why? And this is, again, I told you, when I was told to go through the process for a diagnosis of ADHD, I spoke to all my friends who were more mischievous than me. All my friends, right? And at the end, after I completed this 15 days, I told the doctor, I don't have ADHD. I'm just a naughty boy. And then she looked at it and said, congratulations. Like, I don't know the scale, I can't remember the scale, but let's say the scale of like 7. You've got 5 out of 7 in attention deficiency, you've got 5 out of 7 in hyperactive, you've got ADHD. And I'm like you, I never scored such high marks in school. So it was for me, it was to answer your question, my life was shattered. So when I got the diagnosis of ADHD, it took me a year to recover from that, because I questioned myself, saying, the life I've been leading for 54 years, right? Was it the real Kiran, or was it like the fake Kiran? But the answer after a year was, you did what you did, and you did like really, really well. So you can't change that. But now right, what motivates you. So you've got, I don't know how many years I've got left in this world, but go out, enjoy life, use your talents. And, anybody who knows me from school, if they said, would you imagine Kiran would ever write a book, right? They'll say he'll be the last person to write it, right? But I can't spell, right? But I wrote the book, and I got professionals to help me to write the book, right? And that's what I think a lot of the entrepreneurs, right, who have ADHD are so good in what they do, is because they can delegate, they can get the people to help them. They get the idea, get help, right? So get medical help or get professional help to get your books out or to get your companies off the ground, because you can't do everything yourself. So I've got this character in my book called Dr. I Can, right? I can do everything, right? Because by nature, many of us say we can do everything. You set up the studio by yourself because you can do it, But sometimes you say, okay, I want to take this to the next level. I need professional help. So that's my sort of, take on it, is that don't try to fix this yourself. You can fix, something. It'll take you maybe X% of the way. But once you understand what you're good at and what the areas you need help, then I think you can execute at a completely different level. And I think officially it's like 4 out of 10 global entrepreneurs and leaders. I can't get to the numbers, but after the show we can, if listeners ask, we can get them the statistics. 4 out of 10 global leaders and entrepreneurs will have a diagnosis of ADHD. So because you can't multitask with let's say a normal mind, right? And this is what the brilliance. In my book, is the world is created with a lot of brilliant minds.
I understand. I wouldn't say I understand, but I kind of try to comprehend what the extent of this discussion is, we want to get into the book as well, which is
Yeah.
what we're going to do right now. So I just want to ask, like, in terms of the book, is this like a self-help book, or is this more like a story of resignation and similarities?
Yeah. So there are many, many things behind the book and the reason why I wrote it. So the first is, let me talk about the title, Perfectly Imperfect. And that goes back to the question we were talking about before. How did it impact you? Because till then, right, I've seen myself as this perfect Kiran, right? The guy who's had a successful life, wonderful family, nice house, come from the streets of Bangalore. And I have this fantastic episode, right? So I'm born and brought up like literally in Johnson Market. And, if you ask me like 54 years back, Kiran, would you be living in Copenhagen, in this lovely country? I would say like, come on guys, don't kid me, right? We are, in the market area, we are fighting for cock balls, we are robbing mangoes, right? So I've lived this, the life of my dreams and sort of, surpassed my dreams, right? So I call it the perfect life. And when I got my diagnosis of ADHD and I started questioning myself, and I did it, right? It's natural. You have to grieve. So I went through a grieving cycle, right? And then I realized that, okay, wow, I have this imperfection, right? I've got to embrace it because I cannot shun it. Okay, I've got to accept it because the minute I accept it, I can do, marvelous things about it. And then you have the subtitle, How ADHD Can Inspire Leaders and Entrepreneurs to Burn Brighter and Not Burn Out. See, when I got my diagnosis of ADHD, and you said it yourself, did you go on the internet? I went on the internet. And on the internet, and on the books I read, see, these were all stories telling you how fucked I'm going to be for the rest of my life, right? There was zero inspiration from me, literally, if you didn't go out actively and find it. It was medicine, it was this, your marriage is going to break, financial ruin, because these guys didn't want you to feel happy about your diagnosis
And that
of
would
ADHD.
just add to it.
Yes. So then what happened was, it was also the corona time, right? And then a lot of my classmates, my age, children started getting all sorts of diagnoses: ADHD, bipolar, dyslexia, anxiety, depression. And because of who we are, we didn't know how to handle it, right? We literally didn't know how to handle when our children who are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 were coming home with these diagnoses. It was like a stigma. But how can I tell the world outside that my son has, let's say, bipolar? He's never going to get married. He's never going to get a job. And this is where I reached out to a lot of people and said, see, this is a problem. We've got to handle it. And I don't mind telling my story. And this guy said, Kiran, you tell your story, write it, and we will help you to get this out. And the other thing, why I put the word leaders and entrepreneurs, because I questioned myself and said, if I got my diagnosis of ADHD at the age of 14 or 15, could the trajectory of my life have changed? Right? Could I have become an entrepreneur at an earlier age? Right? I'm a born leader, and it's not because I run big companies. It's because right from the age of 5 or 6, I was the leader of all the mischief done in Richmond town. Right? From robbing a mango to jumping a wall, I would always have 3 or 4 guys behind me. So I knew I had this leadership gene in me. I was not given admission from Joseph School to Joseph's College because, like my father always laughed,
History.
he said, no, it was your son has leadership qualities, but it's the wrong qualities, right? So I literally didn't get admission, right? And I'm a born entrepreneur because anybody who has a problem or who comes to me with a problem, I have a solution. See, whether the solution works or not, I don't really care, but I have such fun, finding these solutions. So I wanted to use the play of words, how ADHD can inspire leaders and entrepreneurs, because I want, the youngsters today to go out and embrace the differences, but say, okay, daddy or mommy, I think I may have ADHD. Can we address this in the right way? And then if the parents, and I believe, our parents, our generation parents are much more, flexible or open to saying, okay, maybe you have it. Let's spend the time or the money to talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Because if these youngsters who are struggling today, if they get the right help, right, maybe they can do fantastic things. And then the word burnout and burn brighter. I was burning out. I had no energy, and I couldn't understand why I was burning out. I had money in the bank. I had fantastic family. I had everything, but I was burning out. I was so tired. And that's why I said, the world, if I have to give anything to the world, it is to tell them stop burning out, but burn brighter. Because for each entrepreneur or leader who burns out, it's one less idea to the world, right? So if I burnt out at the age of, let's say, 52, 53, I would never have gifted Perfectly Imperfect to myself
Or to the
or
world.
to the world. And to answer your question, why did I write Perfectly Imperfect? It was therapy for me. It's 400 pages, right? But it's like 400 pages of wisdom gathered from my parents, my grandparents, from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Bible, from the mischief I've created on the road, is because I am a deep thinker, and I found out I do a lot of podcasts. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I found out all the stuff which I was listening on the internet about ADHD and dyslexia and all this, and all the big gurus who are talking about spirituality and all this. All they were telling me was nothing different to what my parents, my grandparents, a few teachers told me in school, right? We didn't like it, right? Get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, eat properly, right? We didn't like it. But today, people like me are paying a lot of money to get those habits back.
Basically, what you got a pattern with a pat on the back, now you are getting the same pattern, but paying someone else with the
Paying
cash.
somebody, yeah. And it's totally ridiculous, right? And that's why in the book I use this term miners and millers. So basically, for me, a miner is an entrepreneur, right? Because in my life, there are so many people who have been telling me, do this, do this, do this. But to be an entrepreneur, it requires a lot of guts, right? And the word miller is like a leader, because a leader doesn't really have to, be this most creative, person on the world, but he's got to lead people to, take an idea from an entrepreneur and bring it out into the world. So I work a lot with this concept called miner and millers. And behind Perfectly Imperfect, there are some of the most brilliant minds in my batch who are like fantastic leaders and entrepreneurs, in all around the world today. So all these young men and women have helped me to create Perfectly Imperfect.
So these stories that you have in your book, it's not just about what Kiran Vas has experienced. It's also about stories of others. You're saying?
No, it's I would say it's my experiences which I've put in a way. So the book is written for people with short attention spans. So even though I say it's 400 pages, there are stories. Most of them are between 3 to 4 pages long. So you can read them for 5 minutes and then move on. So the base of the story is I looked deep into myself when I was diagnosed with ADHD, and what I missed the most was my smile. Right? So I was literally what I call a smileless pauper. I couldn't find a smile, right? And then as I accepted that I was a smileless pauper, I started visualizing in my mind characters. So you have this character called O, because when I say O, it's not Om. It's like when I say O, two things can happen. One is Kiran is going to do something like totally fantastic, right? Wow, Kiran, how the hell did you do this? But I'll say O and then I'll do something. And then if I use a different pronunciation for O, I'm going to screw something up big time, right? So this character O, it became
It's like O and O.
Oh, exactly. Ayo, we say ayo, right? So I didn't want to use the word ayo because in a global context, it would be lost. But O is like Kiran. It's the essence of Kiran. And then when I had ADHD and I was going through my grieving period, I said, O has disappeared inside me. I've lost him. So I've got to do everything in my power now to find him, right? So I've got to find him. I've got to bring him back into my life, and I've got to keep him in the rest of my life. Because without O, my life had, like, I won't say no meaning, but it was a tasteless
It was
life.
like a flatland.
Right? So then I said, okay, imagine, Kiran, O has been captured by some nasty forces who want to keep you miserable. They want to keep you depressed. They want to keep you anxious. Go on an odyssey to free him, right? So you've got to find him. He's hiding somewhere inside you. You've got to free him from these evil forces, right? You've got to, bring him back into your life, and you've got to keep him there forever. But I couldn't do this by myself. So I've got like 3 versions of O. Oh yes, in the book is like, oh yes, wow. I won 100 meters in school. Oh yes is like, wow, I've got a degree. And oh yes is like, wow, I bought my first house. But on the other side, you've got the oh no's. You've got oh no is like, oh shit, man, I lost my keys again. Or you have oh no is like, oh my God,
I fucked
up again. I have lost my job. And then you have the oh no, which is like, oh shit, I've got anxiety or depression or something like that. And it's the play of these 6 characters which is the essence of of the story. And this is what I'm going to say now is like really important to all the listeners, is the fertile imagination. So for me to rescue O, right, I needed help, right? And where do I get help from? I can't come to you and say, please help me to find O. So I had to go inside me and find strengths and friends invisible friends to help me to free this invisible character called O. And this is where I found out something called hobbies and passions.
Do you talk to yourself, Kiran?
A lot.
And
A
do
lot.
people say you're schizophrenic with that?
Yeah. So.
Is this like a comorbid of ADHD?
Yeah. So I mean, let's not use the word schizophrenic because that's a medical condition. So when I talk to myself, it's an internal dialogue. I mean, let's take the word schizophrenic out of the discussion because I've been. If I talk to myself when I walk along the road, then people look at me strangely and say, okay, there's something wrong with him. But the dialogues I have are internal dialogues. And this is where the universe I created called Olandia is very, very powerful. So I'm just coming back to the story. So what I decided on to find O is I didn't want to go on a journey. Everybody goes on a journey, right? It's like, I'm going on a journey to find myself. I'm going on a journey of discovery. I said, no, what I'm going on is not a journey. It's an odyssey. This is Homer's Odyssey. This is tough, Kiran. You've got to be there on the darkest days, right? It's going to go bad. Right? Do you have the guts or do you have the fucking balls to do it, right? Okay, it's not an easy decision because once you go there, right, there's no turning back, right? So I've changed my life completely. And at the age of 54, if you decide to make those decisions, right, just think what your family thinks. Where are we going to be, right, when daddy comes out on the other side, right? So these are tough decisions. These are gut, wrenching decisions you have to make, right? So the way I did it was I went on this very, very rich inner journey because I've got this fertile imagination, right? And then I said all my fantastic days, right? I said I lived them in the Cape of OES. This is where every day, oh yes, you've had this on the football field. You've beaten Baldwin 6-0, Cottons 10-0, Germans you've beaten. So these are OOS days. But the down days, what I call oh no days, right? And I call them capes because a cape is like three masses of water meeting, right? And these are like really tough or beautiful places to be in, right? And then I said, okay, now to free O, right? I don't want to be on the Cape of OES because I don't want to be in La La Land. Right? I don't want to be in the Cape of oh no because I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be anxiety. I've been there, done that. I don't enjoy it. Never again. But I need to go somewhere else. And this is where I said I want to find this character called O. I don't know where he is. And I'm going to go on this odyssey, not by myself, but I need help. So I told you about my father, my teachers, etc. See, I can't take these guys on the odyssey. And this is where I started visualizing them. Right? I started visualizing these guys to help me find O.
And that O is, again, you're saying it's like a structure for yourself.
It's the essence of Kiran.
Essence of the.
So if at any day, any time which I'm feeling sad, I say, okay, oh, where are you? What's wrong? Right? Why are you hiding inside me? Why are you quiet? Right? What can I do to make you happy again? Right? If I'm very, very happy and O is like, really, really happy, then I know I'm doing something good. What am I doing? Can I do more of it? Right? And the way to create this universe, right, is I use what I call my passions and hobbies, right? Because you need to visualize, you need to create, you need a medium to express yourself. You just can't, like you said, walk on the road and think about this. You've got to express yourself. Some people express it to art, some people express it to music, some people express it to, knitting or something like that. I had no way to express it because for 50 years, the only thing I knew to do was to work, right? Was to work. But then I found out, okay, what do you enjoy, Kiran? Right? See, I enjoy cooking. I make the most amazing curries, but I can never make the same curry again. But because when I cook, from the time I go to the shop and buy the vegetables, see, I'm in a process, right? I can visualize. And I've been doing this unconsciously for many years. So when I'm making a curry, the pepper will be the good guy, the chili will be the bad guy. So when I cook, a lot of the questions which I'm going on in my mind, I'm getting answers to, right? So suddenly I had my first friend, right? It's not Jocelyn or Ram or Sunil. It's this guy called cooking. Then I visualize cooking. What else do I enjoy? I enjoy eating, right? When I eat like a baby. Literally, and my wife looks at me and says, I've never seen anybody enjoying so much food. Then I visualized eating. So eating is a visual in my book. Then I said, okay, what else do you enjoy? I love cracking daddy jokes. My children just hate them, right? But making people smile is what comes naturally to me. See, then I got my third hobby, right, called smiling. Until then, I'm telling you, other than kicking a ball, I had no hobby.
This is a byproduct of what the two things you're already doing.
Yes. But I'm putting words onto images.
But also, Kiran, somewhere I have this thought that about yourself, you question something about yourself because you already have the answer within you, but then it's just about tapping into it. And you
Yes.
sometimes can tap into it by yourself or sometimes with an external help. Is that true?
Yeah. So the way I see it is, I've got all the answers inside me. I don't know what questions to ask, or I'm asking the wrong questions, right? Because then I needed more friends, right? I needed some serious friends, and that's where I came to my passions. So my passions were like, when I was doing the book, ADHD was my passion, right? So I have this character in my book called Nutcracker. You've got to see the character in the book because he's basically like a ball on a spring, right? So that was a image of me, because when I'm in the zone, I'm happy. I'm like jumping up and down on the spring, right? It's a very Danish thing, right? And when I'm unhappy, it's like my spring is broken. So in the book or in my life, Nutcracker is visualized. My ADHD is visualized as Nutcracker. My leadership is visualized as a person. I call it pleader, because as a leader, a lot of my life has been spending pleading with people to do this. And the entrepreneurship, which is my third passion, I call it spark plug, because I've got like a crazy amount of ideas every day. It's like a spark, always looking for something to ignite, right? And slowly I started developing, I call them pixies with me. I'm getting there. And then I started visualizing the people who mentored me. So, for example, a teacher, she's called Mrs. Bolt. If I want to strategize something, right, I have this pixie called Colonel Cocktail. And once again, we've been thinking, but aren't you talking to yourself? Yes, I am. But if I need to make a strategy, I go for a walk with Colonel Cocktail, because I know how he looks. I know what questions to ask. Because in all of these guys, I've encoded words of wisdom. So it's my encoding of words of wisdom. So when you read the book, you can switch any of these characters out, with who you want. Because at the end of the day, it's therapy. It's therapy, right? For me, it's like therapy. If I have a problem, let's say I've got this character called Mr. If Only, and all entrepreneurs will know it. If only I did this, I would have been so rich. So I've got this character called If Only.
The regrets are plenty.
Yeah, regrets. I've got this character called Spam Fighter, because our lives are filled with spam. You're talking about internet and all this, right? So how do I channelize? How do I filter all the crap information that comes my way into these beautiful pieces of information which I can take and build into beautiful products? So I've got about 8 of these characters, and that's what I call my world Olandia. That's my universe. That's inside me, right? And I don't need help from highly paid consultants, etc., 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 because very soon I found out like talking to a psychologist was no use for me, because I didn't get much. But working with a psychotherapist was better for me.
What's the difference?
I think a psychotherapist gives you tools, like cognitive tools, to help you solve problems. But I think a psychologist, at least the one I worked with, is more having a dialogue with them, right? So they listen to you, and then they know how to get you to talk, because that's what they want, right? But a psychotherapist works for me because my nature is I need tools, right? I need, Kiran, that's where you want to go. These are the tools you want to do, right? So stuff like breathing, mind games, cognitive therapy, all this sort of stuff, it really helps me a lot to calm this mind of mine, which is hyperactive. So it's not only my body which is hyperactive, it's my mind which is hyperactive, and I need to channel this energy in the right way, because once anybody starts doing this the correct way, right, you can achieve amazing things. And that's why I've built this universe for myself, Olandia, which I'm giving the world, right? This is like fantastic therapy. I've visualized it for you. I've given you, short stories. I've given you episodes. I've given you concepts, how to manage.
And also, I believe in what you've written. From what I've ever heard from you till now, is it's more like the short stories are more like bring back someone's attention span, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're reading, you tend to visualize whatever you're reading, because that's like a story building in itself.
Yeah.
And sometimes in today's time, or with ADHD be it the case, or even in today's time, how it is you would read 2-3 lines and then you're done with it. You don't have that patience to move on and read a little more. But when you frame your language, when you frame that storyline in a certain way, that brings about that intriguing factor when someone's reading it, and that's when it builds on. Another thing that I want to ask you, Kiran, is I have a friend in the US who's clinically diagnosed with ADHD. Now, he smokes up. When I mean to say smokes up, is he says that he consumes marijuana. in like a cigarette, like smoking up form, and it says it helps him focus a lot better. What is the case? If you tried it, does it work for you as well? I'm not trying to endorse
No, yeah.
marijuana, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of you're in Denmark as well, I'm sure you have the exposure to stuff like this and the likes.
Yeah, 100%. So I have chosen to take medication, and basically the medication I take, it gives me this, it regulates my dopamine. But yeah, so to focus, etc., I just have to take the tablets. But
These are CBD, hemp.
no, it's. I mean, in a broad perspective, I think there are two sorts of medication forms for ADHD, and they're, I think, two different preparations. So some work for one, some worked for the other. So I take the one which works for me. It's like deatiled something or other, which is, I think, small doses of cocaine. And when I take them, it regulates my dopamine for like half the day or something like that.
The legal Pablos are making it.
It is it is legal, and it has a good effect, on you. But then what I found out was, like, maybe the first half an hour, 45 minutes after taking them, when the effect starts kicking in, it's better for me to just sit down and do nothing, because then I'd probably go and, because I'd be so buzzed, I could probably go and buy some stocks or shares or something.
Right.
I mean, I've done it, right?
Huh.
So the first half an hour, 45 minutes, when I know it started kicking in, I just go out and sit down and do something else. But medication takes you only half of the way. And like I said before, I've changed a lot of my lifestyle.
Right.
So, for example, I get up in the morning and have a cold shower, right? Or in the winter, I jump into the sea in Denmark, which is like 0 degrees.
Oh.
Because all this stimulates a lot of the different endomorphines and all that in the system, right? I breathe a lot. Right, so whenever the mind is hyperactive, I breathe a lot. I meditate a lot. I walk a lot, and I'm always, when I'm out walking, I'm always consuming podcasting information.
Uh-huh.
So today I don't get. Most of my knowledge I get is through my ears, right? The voice of people giving me the most beautiful information through my ears, and then I've got to process it, right? I read a lot, so I read a lot of the scriptures, because all these are not only calming for me, but they're enriching for my life, right? So, for example, if I just read like a shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, it's so relevant for me, because there's so much about anxiety and depression in the holy book, right?
Right.
So, my doctor told me, is like, medication can take you half the way, and rest is lifestyle changes, and the medication has a different impact on every person. So, for example, some people say, I can't function without taking the tablet in the morning. And I say, for me, I have absolutely no problem getting up in the morning, because I'm a morning person, so I don't need the tablet, right? So I probably take my tablet a little bit later when the energy levels are falling, right? And some people say we don't need the tablet, coffee or a beer. It's just the caffeine, right? It regulates the dopamine. So then they just drink a couple of coffees every day. I know guys who calm down with beer, etc. But again, you need the help of...
You would need an outsider's help.
Yeah, and the thing about ADHD and all this is, there being some comorbid relationship to bipolar or autism or something is very, very, it's quite normal, right? So that's
Are the chances high?
Are pretty high. It's double digit. So that's why a proper diagnosis is very, very important, because a misdiagnosis can send you down an alley you don't want to go in.
I know that there is, I mean, I don't want to say double figures in percentage, but the numbers are massive when it comes to today's times, where we have a lot of people whose lifestyle is the reason that people would have probably undiagnosed ADHDs, where people are actually not able to perform to their best in a lot of things that they're doing. It's not like, okay, ADHD people are really smart and hyper, and it's more towards the lifestyle, I think, is what has led to where people are today. And I think your book might just give them a little insight, and also in terms, I would feel, it might better them to an extent, because this is coming from someone who's already has been diagnosed with ADHD, and short stories sell, and today's time they sell the best.
Inspire.
Yeah,
I think it's so many
and if you could if you have to engage with someone in 10 seconds, I'm sure if you could inspire and interact and engage, do all these things with someone by just reading, it does a lot, and it does do a great deed for anyone who's looking into it. So I don't think this book is only for the ones with ADHD. It's for anyone's, recreational reading purpose too.
So the way, that's why I said, right, in the book I work a lot with hobbies and passions. So I use hobbies, let's say cooking, eating and laughing. You can say cooking doesn't interest me, but I like podcasting. right? Eating doesn't interest me, but I like trekking, because what I use these for is actually to process thoughts,
Right.
right? And the passions I've chosen: ADHD, leadership, and entrepreneurship. You can say, my passion is like football or science or chemistry. ADHD can be replaced by anything. It could be fear of flying, or the fear of cockroaches, or anything like that. Because at the end of the day, what I'm trying to tell the user is, like you said before, you have all the answers inside you. If you do not need, like, if you don't have a condition which requires serious medical help, right? So I believe that a lot of the problems we face today, and we'll be talking about this, are man-made problems, right? I mean, I could have avoided anxiety. I could have avoided depression,
Right.
if I did something different, right? No regrets. But luckily, it gave me my diagnosis with ADHD. But very often, if you say, okay, I don't want to go down this path, I've got enough money in the bank, right? But I want to do something else. I just want to go on a walk or hike or something like that, right? See, you de-stress in completely different.
Peace of mind is what a lot of people lack today.
Yeah. And you look, I mean, again, we're talking about, the old Bangalore, right? You look at our grandparents and all that, they prayed, right? And they were so much at peace. And many of the old people say is like, if you have a good conscience, you sleep well at night, right? So that's so beautiful. It's so simple, but it's so true, right? And that's all these questions. When I was not sleeping well, they started, upsetting me and irritating me, right? But I had everything in life. But see, the answer of my sleeplessness was untreated ADHD.
Yeah, and it was not because of a bad conscience at all. Because I know, I believe, or rather, a lot of people believe that nobody is good or nobody is bad. Everyone is good. It's just about the choices you make based on situations might make you be, or rather picturize you as a bad person. Nobody is bad or good. It's just the choices that we make. And it's the most simplest thing in life. Is about keeping yourself sane and keeping yourself active to be sane as well. Active, I don't mean to say having too much of an activity in the brain, but for the body.
Yeah.
And I think your book will do a lot of good deed. I just want to know where and how can people buy your book.
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon.com or Amazon.India. It's, I think you should buy it because I share the story of my life. And the last thing I want to sort of share with readers, which anybody can take away, is, especially if you are, a leader or entrepreneur, is this whole concept of net worth, right? So if you call me at 12 o'clock at the night and you ask, Kiran, how much are you worth? In 5 minutes, I can give you a balance sheet of all my assets and liabilities. But if you ask me, Kiran, how much, is your net worth, right? I would struggle to answer. So I've given you the solution in this one, because in my life, when there are 4 things in balance, see, I am smiling more than I'm grimacing, right? So that's why I've set this goal of creating 1 billion smiles every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the secret for me is my physical health. I call it wealth. So if I invest in my physical wealth, walk, I mean, I've got a lot of problems with my body because of accidents. But if I look after my physical health, I can go far. When I need help, go to a doctor. My financial wealth, I mean, I have had so much of problems managing my money. Today, I say I don't want that tension. I'm going to give it to a professional financial manager. I have the luxury to do that. The third one is what I call the mental health. I've never bothered about mental health in my life because, it was not important. But when it became important, I had no clue how to figure it out. And the fourth one is what I call the social wealth, right? Is we have so many friends who give no meaning to our life, right? How do we filter them out?
Social liability, you mean?
Social liabilities, right? So I call it in my book, net worth. Find the balance. It will make you smile. Then I've set this goal to become a smiling billionaire. So I literally have what I call a smile and loss, profit and loss statement, right? I give you a checklist of what I do like a leader, you check your balance sheet once a week, once a month, every quarter, every year. So I've given you formulas of how to do to make sure that you're smiling more than you're grimacing. So I've got some fantastic, mind-blowing concepts in the book, which you look at and say, like, how the fuck has he thought about this? But when you read it, it's written with humor. You will say, this guy is like, he's got it on. So it's not net worth for me. It's probably something else for you. It's not smile and loss, profit and loss statement. It's something else. But what I'm giving you is so tangible. It's so realistic because some of the cartoons are like your teachers in school, right? So buy the book, enjoy it, or give it to somebody you love, because I think everyone I know who I've been talking to the last couple of months knows somebody whose life is impacted by a mental challenge, right? And what has helped me to come out of the ditch I was in is a support system. So families, please support your loved ones. Without your support, we can't do what we do. So I thank my wife and my children for helping me, because without them, I would have probably hit the bottle, or I would have probably done something stupid, right? Because many of us, when we have these problems in the line of work I come from, it's the bottle or it's smoke, right? Smoke can help. Marijuana is good, I believe so. But these are the stimulants which are...
Anything above a certain limit is bad.
Yes, exactly.
So there's always got to be a balance, and balance in every sphere of life.
Yeah.
And Kiran, thank you so much for coming by, sharing your life, man. And I wouldn't say in a nutshell or in a nutshell. I will just say it was a great conversation, not just about old Bangalore, but to understand this whole realm of ADHD, not to its best, because there's a reason I don't touch on topics like the myths to bust or these things, because people need to get it diagnosed, whatever the case it is. I'm not someone who believes in depression can be treated by a doctor, because I know depression's in the mind, and the mind is a beautiful place that can work a lot of magic. But also, a help is required when it's needed. So whoever's watching, if you somewhere felt like whatever he said is something that you've experienced or gone through, please get some help. There's nothing wrong in it. There shouldn't be a stigma about getting help for anything. So imperfectly perfect, that's what all our lives are. We strive to be perfect, but yet we become imperfect in many ways. Thank you so much once again, Kiran. All the best for the book, all the best for life ahead, and may you go on not just to inspire in a regular way, but also help people come out of all the stigmas and difficulties they have.
Thank you so much. And like I said, my goal is to create 1 billion smiles every day. And please go on my website, www.kiranvas.com, because it's the story of my life. It'll put a smile on your face. It will inspire you. So please, I'm giving you all the stuff. Make the most out of it. Thank you.
Shall. Thank you so much once again, and all the best for the travels ahead, man.
Thank you, and same to you. And